This is The Resilient Life, where we believe that every human will struggle in this life. Our challenge is to struggle well. I'm Ryan Manion. I lost my brother to war, my mom to cancer, and I'm the daughter of a retired Marine. I'm also a wife, mom, author, and president of one of the nation's leading veteran service organizations. Join me and some incredible guests as we explore the value of struggling well through life's inevitable challenges. Welcome to another episode of the Resilient Life podcast. I come to you today with an awesome guest, Mike Hayes. A little bit about Mike. His last duty job was the commanding officer of SEAL Team 2, which included 10 months as the commander of a 2,000-person Special Operations Task Force in southeastern Afghanistan. A former White House fellow from 2008 to 2009, he served 2 years as Director of Defense Policy and Strategy at the National Security Council. He's an avid Red Sox fan. We'll have to talk about that. And Patriots fan. I did not know that before I had him on. Apologies to my Eagles fans. And lives in Westport, Connecticut with his wife and daughter. Mike, you've been in a lot of high stakes situations, and you talk about, living this life of once in a lifetime experiences. Being held at gunpoint, threatened with execution, jumping out of buildings rigged to be exploded, helping amputate a teammate's leg, and having to make countless split life and death decisions. You've written countless emails to family, telling them how much you love them, just in case those were the last words they ever read. And you wrote a book, Never Enough. As I shared with you, I'm 3/4 of the way through, and this is going to be one that I'm passing to the other side of the bed to put on my husband's nightstand, because I love nothing more than books that share stories to explain concepts. That's the way I kind of wrote my book, and that's the kind of books that I like to read. So I love your book. All of the proceeds from this book go to help Gold Star families. So important to know, this is not just another SEAL writing a book. This is another SEAL that's going out to do good and to help others. And the proceeds from this book have helped to pay off mortgages of Gold Star families. So incredible. Mike, welcome to the Resilient Life.
Ryan, thank you so much. You're right. I have been in a million high stakes situations, but none higher than this here today for this hour. You're an absolute legend and a hero and an inspiration to so many, Ryan. Certainly for me, but on behalf of everybody that I come across, thank you and your organization for all of the incredible inspiration and lift up for this great nation and this great planet. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, you as well. Again, we were talking a little bit before. We have a lot of similar connections and similar friends. But as I started reading your book, as soon as we connected and I got you on as a guest, I ordered your book and I started reading it. And right away, I think I hadn't even started reading it, but I kind of opened it up, and I opened it right to Al Anbar Province 2007. And, my first thought is like, oh, wow. Mike was certainly there when my brother was deployed to the Al Anbar Province. And, just feeling that connection and knowing what you experienced over there at the time. And you share some stories of things that you were involved in while you were over there. And they're eerily similar to the types of things my brother was doing over there, and especially what happened to him on the last day of his life. And I think about the situation my brother was in, but it's hard to realize that was happening like everywhere, every day, every minute, with all of the men and women that were on the ground there.
Yeah, Ryan. So first of all, it goes without saying also, you and your family have been thrown in incredible hard situation in life. And you're just such an example for somebody who handles that with grace and elegance, and instead of looking at your feet and looking down and in, you just continue to look up and out, and how can you make a difference. And one of the things that helps me, as I've buried many friends, not literally my blood brother, but people who I'm as close with my blood brother with, and is one of the things I find helpful is I just think, like, what would that person be saying to me right now? And I guarantee that your brother and all of his teammates and my teammates are looking down at us and just saying, my goodness, thanks for you. We want you to be happy. We want you to be optimistic. We want you to be positive. We want you to know that we're, this is an incredible nation. And while the outcome on that particular day was terrible, it wasn't what anybody wanted. At the same time, everybody signed up for a cause larger than self, and your brother and many of the Marines, all of the Marines and SEALs and whatever, they're just true heroes. And I've been humbled. I go right back to that place in 2007. We ate in the same chow hall. We walked the same grounds. In April 2007, the statistic I remember, because that was around the surge, there were 37 Marines killed in my first 30 days of the deployment in and around Fallujah. And it just was horrifying. And at the same time, it was emblematic of a real problem that we had with extremism. And like I like to say simplistically, is there were a lot of bad people trying to do bad things to a lot of good people. And that's what your brother stood for, was stopping that evil.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember specifically, I happened to be at my parents' house. I don't know why I was here. I lived in New Jersey, but I was at my parents' house the night that President Bush came on and announced the surge. And, it was a controversial move, because at that point there was war fatigue. People were saying, let's get out of here. We're done. And he's getting on the television saying, we're going full throttle. We're bringing more troops in. And after he spoke that night, and I was sitting in my parents' family room watching it. Travis is in Iraq at the time. My dad's phone rings and it's Travis. And he called my dad to say, like, this is exactly what we need. This is the right decision. Like, I'm seeing it on the ground. And Travis loved to, like, call home and tell my dad everything that the American public was saying that was wrong. Like, they're saying this, that's not what's happening. When they're saying, the clashing of the Iraqi army with the American army, Travis was calling home saying, I am training the Iraqi army. These guys are my brothers. There is a brotherhood here, so he was really trying to counteract a lot of the misconceptions that the media had on this side. And so I remember that night, my dad saying, Travis is saying this is the right move. And again, it was the deadliest time, I think, in probably all of the time we were there over in Iraq,
Yeah, it was. And it's interesting, Ryan, and I don't know how you felt with this. I'd be curious your thoughts, but with the 20-year anniversary coming, it's really easy for a population to look back and say, oh, we didn't have the right intel and we went in for the wrong reasons. And I have two responses to that. I'd be curious of yours. But number one is, we made the best decision. Our nation made the best decision that we knew how to make with the information that we had at the time. And that's, you can't go back and change the information that we had at the time. And so, sure, could things have been done better, or could we have had better information? Absolutely. But when whether it's a decision to go into Iraq, or I'm in a role as a COO of a large software company called VMware, there's nobody in our 40,000 person employee base that shows up to work and says, what can I go screw up today? Right. It just doesn't happen. You have to judge people on their intent, not their actions. And the intent was good. And then the second thing I would say is, there, like I just referred to, there were a lot of really bad people oppressing some really good people in Iraq at the time, irrespective of any argument about weapons of mass destruction. There was oppression and evil doing evil things to very good, innocent women and children. And that's just, do you stand for that? Yes or no? I know what your brother stood for.
Yeah, I have strong feelings on this. I actually, I try to refrain from heavily taking one side or position too much on social media, because, I want to try to remain neutral and hear all points. But I put something out on LinkedIn on the 20th anniversary, not intending to, in fact, just intending to thank those that had served in Iraq for the last 20 years, right? But I woke up that morning, and every morning I read the Wall Street Journal, I read the New York Post, I'm looking at Fox News, I'm looking at CNN, and there was nothing positive, not one thing positive about the 20-year anniversary of the war in Iraq. The only person that put anything positive out was my friend Griff Jenkins, who is at Fox News and was over in Iraq for many years with Ollie North, and just celebrating the men and women that he stood side by side with. I mean, he's a reporter, but everything was so negative about the disastrous mistake that was made. And then what killed me even more was multiple sentiments about the loss of life in vain, right? Senseless loss of life. And I felt so compelled to say, like, and all of these people giving their opinion on what, like you said, like the intention was there. But there was a lot of people who are, 30 years old at the time. So what, they were 10 when the war started, that had these really eloquent, statements about how the war was a total fraud, and everything they're saying, right? And so, I just kind of put it out there, and I'm like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you believe this war was just or not. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what any of you thinks. It doesn't matter what I think. But what does matter is that we as a society have an obligation on days like that to, and listen, we're a free society, criticize all you want, but don't forget that there are thousands of men and women that gave their life over there, right? And they did give it for a just cause. It may not be the cause you thought it was, but they gave it for a just cause. Okay. And there are more thousands of men and women that came home injured, wounded, mentally, physically. And so for us to just bypass that and not honor those sacrifices on a day like that, it was super frustrating for me. And I put it out there, and I expected to get a little bit of pushback, and I did. There were some people that still wanted to harp on the fact that, like, all of these men and women died in vain. And nothing kills me more than when somebody says my brother died in vain. Like, my brother did not die in vain. My brother knew exactly what he was doing over there. He believed in the mission. And regardless of weapons of mass destruction or not, he died protecting this country. And, and when I have Mustafa, his Iraqi interpreter, sitting in our living room, thanking our family for the oppression that he was able to get out of because of men like my brother that were over there, like that's what I see. And that's what these keyboard warriors will never see. Right. And so I put that post out there, and 2 days later, and again on LinkedIn or Instagram, the comments start, and then they turn into like infighting between each other. Right. And then that's where I just like disengage, because then people are fighting each other in the comments. And 2 days after I put that post up, I get an alert, and it says General Petraeus has commented on your, and I was like, oh crap. And I'm like, what do you write? And I'm get out. And he just wrote, Ryan, thank you for sharing the sentiments of those that were there and knew what was happening. And I was like, yes,
Amen. Like, that is so spot on. Like,
Yeah.
you're really like focusing on the individuals, and the service members is the thing to focus on. And I believe so right. And I didn't read Petraeus's comments, but I'm not surprised by them. He's a gentleman and a scholar. And I also would feel compelled to say, Colin Powell was a White House fellow. There are only about 600 of us, 650 alumni. They pick 14 a year. From all walks of life. It's not just a military thing. And I will tell you that I have sat down with Colin Powell in a very small setting and talked to him about this. And he, of course, American hero, and people can agree or disagree on his decision about, testifying and what intelligence was there or not. Listen, what I would say is, if you're in the arena and you're a public servant, you are going to have criticism if you're doing your job. And so, I find that sometimes with the, if you think about what your post did, is it spurred dialogue, and that really is the foundation of democracy. I hate sometimes reading some of the things. I don't get deep in like in any of these, the vitriol that goes back and forth. What I personally do is I see it, and I don't actually read it all. I just, in my mind, I say, thank God that that's there, because that's what what your brother and me and a million others fought for, was so that we could have that dialogue. I'll say something that I've never said publicly before now, which is it's in the line of like kind of what we're saying here. Recall about a couple of years ago, kneeling for the anthem was the national anthem was a very hot topic. And while I've thought a lot about this, like, oh my goodness, we're building this Medal of Honor museum in Arlington, Texas. I'm on the board of it, and the Jones family has been huge supporters. Charlotte Jones is the chair of our board. I chair the nominating and governance committee. And I see a lot of this very firsthand. And you can think about this from the player perspective, from the owner perspective, from the fan perspective. There's so many different perspectives. And as I thought about all of this very complicated issue, look, where I net out is simple. I would personally never, ever, ever, ever in a million years kneel for our national anthem. That said, you know what? If you want to kneel next to me, that's why I fought. I fought so you can have your own free will and your own decision to make your own decisions. And so while I disagree with somebody individually with kneeling, I don't care about that. What I care about is that they're able to express what they want to express for this great nation. And that's democracy. And that's what your brother fought for.
That is so true. Exactly what I said when I had Chris Long, Howie Long's son, who was a former Philadelphia Eagle, on, and he was part of that kneeling. And he said to me, like, because I said, I will never kneel for our flag. What the flag represents to me, like, I would never kneel for it. And he said, well, no one would ever expect you to kneel for the flag. And I'm like, no. I don't it's not like I get a pass because I'm connected to the military. I had someone who died. Like, that's not what it means, And I respectfully, like you said, agree with him. You want to, he likes to do the thing where I never kneeled. I would just put my hand on those that did kneel. Great. That's fine. And I believe the same thing. And I know my brother would believe that too. Right. Is he going to kind of look at you and be like, really? Probably. But at the end of the day, that's what these men and women who serve and protect us, protect those freedoms to criticize what they're doing, those freedoms to kneel for the flag. And, another thing that I will say when it comes down to like these huge decisions that are made, like, it could have been very easy. Listen, during that surge, if you look at the scope of the last 20 years, there's been different moments of controversy in Iraq and Afghanistan. There's been different times where our service members have died during different times where the parents have been in uproar. There's been helicopter accidents that are being talked about as conspiracy theories and shot down by us. I'm sure you've heard it all, right? And during the surge, when men and women were dying every single day, at that time, at the evening news would put the faces up. Like, I'll never forget 2 days after Travis died on CBS Evening News, it ended with a montage of like, these are the men and women we lost in Iraq. And it was just showing their faces and their names, and that went away. Right. And I think, purposefully, because it was just every day in your face, more and more troops were dying. So much so that President Bush took away the viewing at Dover. So it used to be open to the public, to the media. Well, it was just a few months before Travis died that he closed it off. And he said, it's all private. And so I remember being at Dover, and it was raining, it was cold, and it was my dad, my mom, my husband, and I, and Travis's KCO officer, who happened to be one of his friends from the Naval Academy, thank God. So it was like another friend for us, right? Somebody to support us in that way. But there were 5 of us standing there as that plane touched down and Travis rolled off, that his casket rolled off. And I remember it being so solemn and being like so pissed, honestly, and thinking like, this is not the homecoming he deserves. We wanted people to understand what that sacrifice meant. And so Travis's KCO officer, who was also a helicopter pilot, we concocted this plan. My dad was drilling at MAG 49, an air base unit right out of Philadelphia. And I don't know the specifics of how we worked it out, But instead of Travis going right from Dover, which normally they get picked up and go to the funeral home, wherever it may be, they put them on another plane. We put Travis on the Marine Corps helicopter, and his friend Steve Cantrell flew him to the hangar at Willow Grove, and we opened it to the public.
Oh, wow.
And we opened it to the public and the media. And from there, the funeral home took it in the casket, took the casket in a hearse to the funeral home. But we had hundreds of people show up at this hangar to watch the helicopter land and to watch the Marines in dress blues take Travis's casket off. And I'll never forget turning and seeing a little girl, and I don't know who she was. She's probably 30 years old now, but she was holding a sign that said, "Welcome home, Travis." And I remember thinking, like, that's why we did this. This is why we did this. This is why Travis's homecoming wasn't 5 of us on a rainy tarmac. And those individuals had a chance to see an American hero come home who had given his life and put that face and that name to the public. And so that was really important for us. And my dad always used to say, like, when the newspaper reporters and the media knocked on our door, our initial instinct was to be like, no, right? We're grieving. This is the biggest tragedy we've ever suffered in our life. But we actually said yes. And we opened our doors to talk to anyone and everyone, because my dad constantly said, I need people to know who Travis was. I need people to know his story. And so, that for us was kind of a different take on how we approached the whole situation. And frankly, we haven't stopped ever since, because now we've taken Travis's name and really used it as a catalyst to put a name and a face to this generation.
Absolutely. And I know that Travis is almost metaphorically Travis now, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because Travis represents all of the Travises. And so thanks to you and your family for doing the right thing and getting the exposure, because you're so right. One of the things that I do with my family is when we come, everybody in America has crossed some road where they'll see some little, faded brown sign that says like the specialist so-and-so road or section of a road or something like that. Every single time I do that now, I Google the person and I read about the person. And I would challenge people in America, when they pass roads with names, I don't care what conflict it's from or what great civic action, the person that might not even have been military, but understand who our nation's heroes are. And it's along the same light of what you're saying. But it's the stories that you get when for a minute and a half, you read someone's like citation or something about them on Google. To me, that's keeping that person alive. And that's the hashtag never forget kind of movement and moment.
Yeah. I always say, when people ask, what can we do on Memorial Day? And like in this world of technology, get on your computer and just search fallen hero from any conflict, right? And just learn one story each year. Commit to learning one story, and not just learn the story, but pass it on. As you're sitting at your Memorial Day barbecue, drinking a beer and eating a hot dog, which I hope you do. And I know that's what my brother was doing on Memorial Day every year, And so when you do that, like, share the story of a man or woman that gave you the opportunity to be doing that. It's that
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I wrote an op-ed, I think it was 2 Memorial Days ago, that was published in the USA Today. And one of the things that I would love to share on this topic is that the military doesn't have the corner market on service. Everybody says, oh, that's the service. And we've got 335 million Americans now, whatever that number is. And less than 1% have served through time. That's a pretty small representation in the nation. What I try to do is say, the military doesn't have that corner market on service. Everybody's got different passions and abilities and interests. And so how do you, everybody in America, use your own passions and gifts and abilities and interests to go serve the person next to you? What's really missing for me today is the concept of ownership in America. We all own America. We might have different ideas, like you were saying. Let's not alienate unnecessarily. Let's have our own views, but be respectful of other views. Excuse me. And service is about serving others. And that's what I really think on Memorial Day and days like that. It's a great day to push people who haven't worn a uniform to say, no problem that you haven't worn a uniform. There's zero judgment there. But what have you done for your local church or school or library or cleaning the forest or whatever it is that Teach for America, you name it? Get off the freaking sidelines and go do something so that you own America.
Yeah. What do you think about the idea of mandatory service?
I'm 100% for it, but I think if and only if, and this is what Stan McChrystal and I are good friends. He's a wonderful American, great American hero. This is one of the things that I've seen him take on over the years, is really vocally push for this as well. I'm in Stan's camp on this one. And I believe, though, that there's an if and only if, and that is if the selection of service is broad enough. We've got introverts and we've got extroverts. We've we've got people of all, race, sexualities, gender, you name any division that you could take. How is everybody have equal opportunity to go serve the nation? And we need choices that can resonate with people. And so that year of service should be mandatory, but with a good amount of different ways to choose how to go support this great nation.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I do think that there is something transformational about serving in one capacity or the next. And as small as it is, we do service expeditions through the Travis Manion Foundation. So that's our big initiative with families of the fallen, is we help them work through their grief by serving others. So we do week-long service expeditions where they give back and honor their loved ones through service. And every year we go all over the place, really cool experiences. And we go to Puerto Rico every year. This was our 4th year in Puerto Rico. And I took my 13-year-old daughter. I brought my 16-year-old daughter as well. But more importantly, my 13-year-old daughter, she lives in a world of friends and candy and Snapchat. And I just needed her to break that barrier down. And she was so affected by this trip for a week to just see. It's one of those things where you're sitting down and you're like, there's kids that are starving all over the place. And it goes through your kid's ear and out the other. And for 7 days, every single day, she experienced that. And it was eye-opening for her. And I think when I see just that 7-day experience for this 13-year-old kid, imagine 18-year-old kids across the country having to take a year or 2 years to find out what more there is in this world and how much more they can give. I think it could be, it could be truly changing for society at large.
Hugely transformational. And I smiled in the middle of that because my grandfather was at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 41 when it happened. He was the first, he test piloted all the Navy's first helicopters. And he was just an incredible hero and probably the person, definitely one of the people I looked up to most in my life and had the greatest influence on me. But one of the things that he really emphasized to me was that, hey, Michael, when you have it hard, he was one of the few people that called me Michael. I'm Mike, unless somebody's either mad or it's my grandfather. And he said, Michael, whenever you have it hard, just recognize that there are others who have it harder. And the best thing you can do is go find somebody who has it harder and go help him or her.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is something so healing, I know, for our Gold Star families that we work with. And I say that myself because I feel it when I go on these expeditions, to just kind of step out of your own shit, for better lack of a word, right? And see, no matter how bad you think you have it, somebody has it worse. And one of the things I think is so beautiful in the communities that we're in, when I was in Guatemala and I've been to Puerto Rico now 3 times, is the happiness and joy of the people that you're helping. And they have nothing. They literally have nothing. And they choose happiness and they choose joy. And every little thing that is given to them is with such deep appreciation. And I was reading in your book and I loved it. One of the first things you talk about in your book is you talk about this idea of you make your own happiness, right? You kind of choose it. And you said, I say to my daughter, make it a great day, not have a great day, but make it a great day. And I was like, I love that, right? have a great day, that's like leaving it up to chance. Like, okay, let's see if I have a good day. Like, make it a good day. That becomes, it falls on you. Like, you are the one that decide if you're going to have a good day. So 2 days ago, I dropped my 13-year-old and my 8-year-old off at school, and they're getting out of the car, and I say, "Make it a great day." And my little 8-year-old, he's the sweetest little thing. He said, "Okay, mommy, I love you." And I said, "Honor." That's my 13-year-old or 14-year-old. I said, "Honor, make it a great day. You get to make it a great day." And she looks at me and she goes, "Mom, you're so cringy." And she closed the door and walked out.
Yeah, Ryan, that is so touching. I love hearing that. Thank you for sharing that story. And you know what? Kids are great at having statements like that, and then imitating it later on, and it resonates later on. You know, my daughter's 22. I'm not sure if you were ever 22 and didn't listen to your parents, but no, my wonderful daughter, same thing. You know, for 22 years, like, go, hey, make it a great day. It's an active verb versus a passive verb. Is the world going to happen to you, or are you going to go happen to the world? And not just create great things for yourself, but be more focused on others than self. And, of course, you talk infinitely about resilience. And one of the things that I've been asked in the business world a lot is, with the pandemic, how do you think about resilience, and how do you think about these types of things like what you're talking about now? And I think it's very simple because elite teams, whether it was your brother's Marines or my SEALs or wherever people serve, or whether it's uniformed or not, an elite team to me is a team that recognizes that some people will be relatively up and some people will be relatively down on any given day. Yeah. And how do the people who are relatively up help the people who are relatively down? Because that really takes perception and EQ and awareness and courage to sometimes even have the hard conversations, and then to reach in and help people who are down. Because then, a week or a month or a year later, the roles will be reversed. The person who was up helping will inevitably need help. And that's the way the world works. Life is a series of chapters, and sometimes they're short, sometimes they're long, but there is nobody that goes through a life, no matter how long or short, that doesn't have these chapters and need things. And so that's, I think, ties very nicely with the title of your podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things, so I'm going to keep working it. I will continue to say, make it a great day until, again, I say a lot of things that makes my 14-year-old cringe. As she
Hey, parents are supposed to be cringy.
Yeah, exactly. I always do this. I'm like, Matt, Honor, I'm a cool mom. I try to do this, like, I'm a cool mom, and it doesn't work, but I'll keep trying. But I see it in those little moments where, she's applying for a award at her 8th grade graduation. And the award is about, it's a leadership award for what you do out of school. And and they have a bunch of different ones. And she said, "Mom, I think I'm going to apply for this." And I said, "Well, why do you think you're going to apply?" And she said, "Because I think that some of the things I've experienced, especially when we were just in Puerto Rico, are things that other kids have not got to experience. And I think that I can talk about what it means to lead other people." And, and she was very eloquent in the way that she put it. And I was like, I love that. And I 100% think that you should go for it. So for parents out there that don't think their kids are listening, I mean, they're not at the end of the day, but when it comes around full circle, they are. You keep putting it in their heads and they hear it. So
100%.
Yeah. One of the things that, as I was again reading into your book, one of the first things I came across, and you put up a post the other day about your teammate, and we'll get into that, but you talked about you talk about a lot of your friends that you served with that were SEALs, and different stories with them. And the one name jumped off the page to me, Joe Price.
Oh.
And background story there. My dad went to did a post-grad year after high school at the Hill School, which is right outside of Philadelphia. And he played lacrosse, went on to play lacrosse in college, but did a post-grad year there and played lacrosse. And his lacrosse coach was a man by the name of Harry Price. And my dad, I knew Harry Price's name as I was a young child, because my dad would talk about this coach he had for 1 year, Harry Price, and what he learned from Coach Harry Price. And shortly after Travis died, the Philadelphia Inquirer, again, at that time, you lost somebody, there's like a front page story about the service member during that time. And on the front of the Inquirer is the story about Joe Price. And my dad's reading it, and he's, bunch of expletives, like, oh my God, that's Harry's son. And my dad had no idea that Harry had a son that was a SEAL. And that was a tough loss. As you know, there's a lot of kind of controversy within his death and what happened. I've been to Puerto Rico with his sister. She came with us last year. She is the most eccentric, incredible woman. She's all over the place, and she has deep love for her brother Job. That was really tough for my dad to, kind of hear about Harry losing his son and, a commanding SEAL officer. I just wanted to share with you that connection to Job.
Well, Ryan, thank you. I didn't know that connection, and it's really touching, and it's really hard. I'll share. So Joe, for everybody, Job Price and I were classmates in SEAL training. My class started with 120 guys, 19 finished. I made fun of Job because he got sick and actually finished the class behind me, but we were roommates. We were roommates for the first 3 years in the SEALs, and couldn't have been better friends. And, roll the clock forward 15 more years. I was the commanding officer of SEAL Team 2, went over to Afghanistan, led the whole team in Special Operations Task Force. Job came in to relieve my team and to come actually relieve me, moved into my room. I hadn't lost any Americans in the 10 months that I was there. And Job lost 4 in his first month, and then took his life in the bed that I slept in for the previous 10 months. And it was just incomprehensible to me. And Ryan, I think, what I'll share, which I don't think I've talked about publicly either, quite so openly as I will here, but when I was back home on a Friday afternoon, I picked up the red line, the secure phone, to call Job and just check on him and say, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything I can still help you with from back here, et cetera? And, there was a new policy where you needed a 4-digit PIN in order to get your call placed overseas. I didn't have a PIN. I wasn't going to call somebody back in at work at 3:00 on a Friday afternoon. And I was like, screw it. I'll call him on Monday. He took his own life on Saturday. And I think I'm one of the very, very, very few people that could have detected in him what was going on in his head and could have done something about it. And look, that's really hard. Like I beat myself up over that many times, but at the same time, I also don't, because I know that, I know what he would say to me. And these are hard things. I think that one of the most important things to understand is the importance of what I now call being intrusive in other people's lives. We often hear intrusive as a bad word. And I have now asked the awkward question of, like, have you considered harm to self? Thousands of times. Out of every 100 times I ask it, there are 99 awkwards, but there's one person who says yes. And Ryan, I'm sure you're the same way. I'll take the 99 awkwards for the one yes any day of the week. And so being intrusive and helping people is why we are here. And it goes back to my comments earlier. There are all chapters in life, and no matter how bad things are, the brain is a strange thing, and it can work with it's real sickness. It's real sickness or disease, or mental health is a real issue that is not like, early on the stigma of suicide was like, oh, that person must have been weak, they just wanted a way out. Nothing could be further from the truth and false. And so I think we're starting to understand that. And my prediction is we will start to understand this more and more over the coming decades, and look back at this chapter of Iraq and Afghanistan and in this spate of suicides, and understand it a bunch more. I will acknowledge, today's it was a week ago Monday, Mike Day, a really dear friend, took his own life. And Mike was an American hero who was at my team. I chose him to go forward in Iraq and be part of a turnover with SEAL Team 4 ahead of us. And on the first operation, Mike was shot 27 times. He lived through all of that, continued to take out the four terrorists who were holding an Iraqi family against their will, saved the Iraqi family, and Mike was, there just couldn't have been a greater American. And here it is, that was 2007. Here we are in 2023, and Mike takes his own life. It's just like, these are very, very hard problems.
Yeah. I didn't know Mike, but I certainly was familiar with his story. He wrote a book called Perfectly Wounded. Um, and that week he took his life. I know a Marine that took their life. I think there were 3 service members in the same week that I heard of that had taken their life. And, with Mike, like, he was a high profile veteran, right? And so I'm really having trouble kind of wrapping my head around this idea that nobody saw any of these signs, right? And how scary is it that, and I don't want to say just because he was high profile, but you think like he's got all these people around him, right? You would imagine that he has some sort of network and circle, and this idea that nobody saw how he was suffering. And I wonder, like, honestly, I'm stumped at where we're going wrong with this epidemic that is happening. It's scary. And I don't have the answers. I certainly don't have the answers, but I have a lot of questions. And I continue to wonder what we are doing wrong that we are not spotting. And again, like, I keep pushing out on social media, like, it's okay, because I think the first thing, and you said it, is like being intrusive. I think we are still having a hard time overcoming the stigma of being afraid and thinking that, like, talking about suicide is going to give people an idea of, like, hey, Mike, are you thinking about killing yourself? And all of a sudden that puts it in your head. Like, we wasn't going to kill himself before, but you just asked him. So now he's thinking about
It
it. Like,
doesn't work like that.
right.
Yeah, it's I was sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Brian. So I was pretty broken up when I got the news, and my wife was like, "Gosh, it just seems so simple. Why isn't there just a spreadsheet of people's names and when was the last time somebody checked in on the person?" And it's so right, but at the same time, it's just so freaking hard to bring that to life, And I will say that there are some cases where people don't see it. That's for sure. There are other cases where people see it, and the person just does the person does everything they can to shut everybody else out, and no one knows how to penetrate that barrier that the person has put up. And it's almost impossible to do so. And what do you do in those cases? Those are really tough situations. And so, look, every case is a little bit unique, but there are patterns and themes, and it shouldn't be complicated to say, okay, you reached out to this person and they didn't answer, or or the person's doing everything they can to avoid you. What do you do? I don't think a lot of people know the answer to that question and know how to handle that. I certainly would struggle with that myself, and I consider myself relatively more informed than most on this topic.
I, through the work at TMF, we measure kind of, we do surveys for all of our veteran members. We try to track where they are within their mental health scores and, positive mental health. And we measure everything from their sleep patterns to employment and everything under the sun. And, there is a national statistic that says, 60% of 60% of those that are feeling like they have suicide ideologies are not connected, right? They're just disconnected from community. And so, like, again, when you get back to this, like, kind of simplistic idea of like community and relationships, right? Those are big drivers in making sure that you are finding a path to your mental health and well-being and being in a good place. But like you said, it's so simple, right? But it's also so incredibly complicated, because when you have this, you may be calling your buddy, but he may live in Arkansas and you don't get the answer. Like, what are you supposed to do? Hop on a plane and fly to Arkansas, and then you get there and he's like, "Man, I've just been busy. I'm on the ranch. I'm doing good. Like, sorry, I haven't been able to get back to you." Right. And so it's these like fine lines between, like, are you over exaggerating if there's an issue, or are you, again, in that place where you're regretting that you didn't make that phone call, right? So, but I think about it a lot, and what's really interesting, and I don't know if there's any correlation, but yesterday I interviewed a Marine, 100-year-old World War II veteran. He's going to be coming up on the podcast soon as well. And he fought in the Battle of Okinawa for 81 out of the 82 days. Now, I tried, he's 100 years old, he's in palliative care. And so I wanted to capture some stories, and he had some incredible stories. But I kept trying to talk to him about like the battle, right? Like what he was experiencing in that battle. And he would say, like, I don't remember. But the things he did remember was playing cards and poker with his friends at night on the Solomon Islands. He remembered, making a makeshift raft and taking it to another island because they heard there was beer there. And so his mind had and his daughter actually said to me, blocked out the other stuff. It's not that he doesn't remember, he's blocked out. And so he started to open up at the end because I guess one of his jobs essentially was to clean when guys were killed and their wallets would come back, their dog tags. His job was to clean the blood off of all of them so they could be sent home. And I tried to dig in a little deeper into what he was feeling at that time. And really he said, I just remember thinking that could have been me. Right. But when I tried to have him talk about his experiences of war, like in the heat of the moment, he couldn't articulate that. And frankly said, I don't remember that. But I do remember after that happened, I was playing poker with the guys. And so I started to think about where we are today, this generation is massively open, talking about everything. Right. And so you think about all the grandpas and my grandfather fought in World War II. I was with the Army Air Corps, did a bunch of missions over Germany, and I don't know anything. And when I asked my dad's like, yeah, I don't know too much about his service. We didn't talk about it. That is a common theme. They didn't talk about it. And here we are today, and this generation overly shares, right? Every last minute of every battle and fight that they were in. And I thought yesterday, because I had read your post, and when I was talking to this Marine yesterday, I was like, I wonder if there's a correlation of we continue to bring all of this up to the surface, right? What's better? Kind of just saying that was a part of my life that happened, and maybe I document it for perpetuity, but it's not something I'm going on podcasts every day and sharing this story of this battle and this story of this, and again, I may be wrong, but I was just trying to find, is there something that, because the suicide epidemic was not happening post World War II. They came back and they got jobs and they went to work. Right.
Yep.
And that was it. And so I don't know. These are all just things that go through my head when I'm falling.
No, I think, look, Ryan, I think you're hitting on one of the most essential parts of the fabric of the nation. It is about community. It is about connections with others. This is my very non-scientific answer is I totally agree with you. If you think about, being in combat and hearing really heavy machine gun fire and having a choice of either moving forward or backward, just to make it very simple. You don't move forward because of a red, white, and blue flag or democracy or apple pie. The reason that you move forward is because of the love of your teammate next to you. And when most of us are in our 20s, whether it was your brother, me, whatever, when we're in the thick of things, we're pretty uncomfortable with the L word, love, but when you're 52 now, you look back and you're like, man, that's all it was love for your teammates. It's really why you do things. And so if you take that lesson, I think that's very easy to comprehend from no matter who you are, whether you've been in combat or the service or not. The real thing is, okay, if that's true, then what do we do and what do we do differently in our daily lives to help others have more connection, more purpose, more meaning? That is the last third of my book, is around, the reason I wrote it is to help people think about their own, meaning and purpose and impact, because an impact in a meaning-filled life is not a life that's necessarily just focuses on gratification. It's a life that focuses on service and contribution, and it really is about making the connections that you're talking about. So I definitely agree with you.
So do you think there's a difference between battlefield and boardroom resilience? Right? You're on the other end of it now.
Yeah, I think yes and no. Of course, like, look, in the boardroom, no one's shooting at you. Like, it's very it's that simple. But the one of the things that I think is absolutely the same is that there is a mission, and this is what separates good companies from average companies. Good companies know how to describe the impact that they're having in the world. And look, you don't need to be, you can choose to plant trees or any sort of decarbonization or whatever your issues of the day are. You can certainly choose that. From a basic business perspective, knowing I like the GDP framework, gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is the total economic output of a nation or of the globe, and so it is just labor times productivity. What's the raw volume of laborers in the workforce, and what is their productivity per hour, per minute, whatever it is. And so you can affect GDP by only those two levers, labor and productivity. And so when you think about SEALs, Marines, et cetera, look, at the end of the day, this sounds terrible, but to some degree, we're commodities for the nation. We're expensive commodities, very well trained, et cetera, but the nation's dollars buy Marines and they buy SEALs, they buy defense. And so if you can create more GDP, that gives our nation the ability to buy more defense, national security, or healthcare, education, or to pay down debt, et cetera, et cetera. And so to me, in the boardroom, now the mission is saying, how do we create GDP for the nation and for the globe? Because that is what pulls societies up. And that's no different than the mission of the national security community.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot about this idea that how you take these practices and you do it so well. Jocko, he does it well. He's got a muster going on right now with Echelon Front. I have a couple of my teammates are down there and they're texting me like, this is, it's our director of people, and he's a young kid living in San Diego, and he's like, this is awesome, right? And so I love how you can take these like applicable skills that you learn on the battlefield and kind of turn them into how an everyday civilian can practice them, in their own career. And I think it's brilliant. I think it's needed. And I think it kind of changes the scope of what our workforce looks like, right? Like you said, like not everybody's going to serve in the military, but we say it all the time, like our organization is a veteran service organization. So we're here to provide programs and support to veterans. But on the flip side, our organization is a little bit different because our organization doesn't exist if veterans are not running our programs. So our programs are about veterans getting out there and being active in their communities, about mentoring youth, about, working with businesses, about developing character. And we need our veteran population to do that. And what a waste for us as a society if you take off that uniform, Mike, and you close the door, you zip up the uniform and close the door, and you don't talk about any of that, and you move to another place. Whereas you take all of those skills, all of that practice that you've learned, and you pass it on to these men and women who haven't put on uniform. But you say, listen, like these are applicable things that you can do that are going to help you be better in business, right? That are going to help you be better in society without having to put on the uniform.
Totally. It is the most important thing is learning from each other. And that's why I'm personally passionate about sharing. That's why I wrote the book, Never Enough. It's like, how do I take 30 years of some successes and many shortcomings and just put that out there and say, here's what I've learned. And likewise, I love to learn from others. And we learn, like my dad and my grandfather used to say, you'll learn more from listening than from talking. But from time to time, it's great to have a chance to talk, whether it's on an engagement like this or in a book or whatever, and share what we've learned. And I think I've certainly learned that one of my passions is giving back in that regard. And I think that also what you said is very good for the veterans as well, because to go help it continues to feed the soul when you're helping others.
Yeah, and I think again it gets back to like a lot of, I think sometimes we get so overly complicated in not just veteran issues but societal issues. So when we talk about mental health and the mental health epidemic, and it's not just within the veteran community. It's magnified and amplified within our veteran community, but this is a national issue. And sometimes we forget to just look at the simple solutions to it. Like, hey, are we making sure that these people are part of a community? Are we making sure that they have healthy relationships around them? Right? I think we don't look for preventable models within our society for things
Yeah.
as it comes to mental health. We look for, okay, how are we going to handle from a clinical care perspective when they are in a mental health crisis, when they are struggling, right? Not like, what are we going to proactively do to help society not have these acute mental health issues? And
Totally agree.
we look at it completely backwards.
Well, it's funny. I was on a business trip to the UK recently, and I went for a run in a park in London. I ran past this chair. It was this bench, park bench. It was said the loneliness bench, and I was like, and there was some other writing, and I was like, what the heck is that? I circled back, and I'm gone are my days of being like, oh my gosh, I'm running my 5 minute whatever mile, and I'm on a time I can't stop, and I'm some robot, So I, just slowly went back to this chair, and it was actually a chair that said, if you're lonely and you want to talk, sit on this bench. And it's just
Wow.
like, it's such a cool, simple concept. It brings to life what you just said. Like, if you're seeking a conversation, sit here.
I love that. We need some loneliness benches in America. That would be kind of a cool project for somebody to take on, right?
It was neat. It was neat.
Yeah. Well, and again, like you think about, we're out of the pandemic. I'm not going to say we're coming out of the pandemic. I think the pandemic officially is over. But that was just this magnifying glass of where we were in society. And so I think that was really it was a tough spot, but I think we're starting to look at how we're coming out of it. Um,
Agree.
Mike, I want to end the way I end every conversation on the resilient life with you sharing with us what living a resilient life means to you.
Wow, that's such a great question that you always do, and I should be better prepared for it. I will
No,
just
I
say,
don't want you prepared.
no, 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 no. I really deeply think focusing on others before self. The saying that I've gone around the SEAL teams and now in life just saying is team, teammate, self. If you're focused on your team first, your teammates second, yourself last, like it's kind of a corollary of one of the things that you learn in any basic branch of the military. But I think that focus on others before self, it's whether it's the Jesuit principles, or if it's very simply based in some of our famous Greeks with names like Epictetus and Socrates, that stoicism. I think that really we've recognized for a long time that a resilient life comes from doing more for others than self. And that's what I try to draw out. I appreciate you also asking about the book, because that is the whole goal, is to do more for others than self. And I'm shamelessly plugging it because, like you said at the beginning, I don't make a penny off of that book. I donate every single penny. Plus, when I do speaking, my speaking fees, all of that go to a very quiet nonprofit. And I have paid off 7 homes for widows of Gold Star widows and families that do bear the very heavy cost of sacrifice that so very well, Ryan. And it's just such a pleasure to be around a person in an organization like you and yours.
Mike, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I could keep talking to you for a while. Lots more to dig into in this book, but others before self always. And pick up a copy of Never Enough. We'll put a link to it on our YouTube page. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Resilient Life podcast.
Thank you again, Ryan. I appreciate you.